Morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm fantastic, thanks. Although it is a cold and blustery day here today, but we are about to head into a deep freeze at least over the next week, and so I figured I'd take advantage and get a few miles in and take you along with me. But as we start the 2019 hiking season, a lot of people are going to be hitting the trails for the first time. And whether that's an attempt of a through hike or just a few overnighters or maybe just a day hike, there is a set of unwritten rules that you learn when you're on the trail. A bit of a hiker etiquette, if you will. And yeah, well, you'll likely figure it out when you get out there. I figured I'd take the opportunity and share a little bit of what I've learned over the last couple of years. Maybe save a few embarrassing incidents. Welcome to my Hikification. So I should probably preface that there are no hard and fast rules. What I'm going to share is really more a hiking etiquette. Some things I saw, a lot of it was just common sense and a little bit's pet peeves. So with that said, the first one is when you're hiking uphill. And as you know, especially when you're in those mountains, hiking uphill can be a little bit grueling, and so the trail is often pretty narrow. And when you're passing somebody coming down, somebody coming up, the common courtesy is to give that person coming uphill the right of way. Now, I often relish the break, but if somebody's got the momentum going and they've got that harder path to take, let them pass first and give way. Next is about music. Now, I like to hike with music playing. It gives me that little momentum on occasion. I like to listen to audiobooks. But if you do it with headphones. I can't tell you the number of times, especially in those early days on the trail, where I came across people with speakers. And they claim, they do it because they didn't think anybody's around, but a lot of people are out there for the nature, the tranquility. Last thing they want is to round a corner and have somebody blaring out the current techno beats. So listen to music, but be respectful of those around you. So next is be naked, but don't be naked. With the exception of Hike Naked Day, one really should remain clothed. And I get you're out communing with nature, sometimes there's this desire to be free. There's also other people around. Now, that being said, there are times you have to clean. And I don't know if you've ever tried to change pants in a hammock, but it's a lot easier to just step out. Granted, under the cover of a tarp, but there are sight lines. The Z-Packs tents are known to be a little bit see-through, especially if you have the gray one. So, be naked, but don't flaunt it. Which actually brings up the next point. Gentlemen, be gentlemen. Especially if you're sharing a shelter with the opposite sex. And they're trying to discreetly do the sleeping bag change, which is not easy at the best of times. Be a gentleman, turn the other way. I think it's also worth noting, maybe more for our younger set, that the trail is not a club. People come out there for very different reasons. And a lot of the younger female hikers I talked to, one of their biggest complaints was constantly being hit on. And so, make conversation, but try and keep the lewd and nefarious behavior to yourself. The hiking community, especially on those long trails, is a pretty close-knit community. If you get a reputation in those early days, it's gonna stick with you. Just don't be that guy. Speaking of reputation sticking with you, try to leave the drama back in the urban jungle. There's really no place for it on the trail. And yeah, sometimes other hikers are gonna piss you off. Try and let it slide off your back. In all likelihood, you're gonna be leapfrogging these same people over a period of the next 6 months. You don't want to burn too many bridges in those early days. The next is learn the joys of the fist bump. This one was harder for me to remember. After 44 years of shaking people's hands, the common gesture of meeting new people is a fist bump. Part of that is just hygiene is not at its highest on the trail, and so you do want to minimize the potential to spread germs. Fist bump's a great way to greet people, and at the same time, you don't have to pull out the Perel every single minute. So speaking of greeting people, I get it, different people have different reasons for being on the trail. And some of it is just to get away from people. That said, you run across a lot of great people on the trail. You don't have to strike up a conversation with every single one of them, but it is nice to acknowledge a fellow hiker. Whether that's a fist bump, whether that's just a hey morning, or a casual nod of the head, it's just an appreciation of a like-minded soul. Day just goes a lot better when you smile at someone. One thing you're going to learn is a term called hiker midnight. And essentially what that is you've put in a long day of hiking. Everybody pretty much hits their sleeping bags 7, 8 o'clock. Hence the term hiker midnight came to bear. So hike your own hike. But if you're one that likes to stay up late and for some reason actually still have energy, maybe keep it down a little bit. Just recognizing your fellow hikers are trying to get some sleep. One thing that's a personal pet peeve of mine is when you come to a shelter site with lots of open space to put up tents. And there's not a lot of people camping that night. Don't camp right beside the next person. Give them a little space, give them a little bit of privacy. There were a few times where literally they could have pitched their tent anywhere and I'm coming to my vestibule and almost tripping over their guy lines. Speaking of where to set up camp or set up your tent, do not, and I repeat, do not set up your tent or your hammock in a shelter. It may seem like a good idea, nobody's around at the time, but you never know when people are going to roll in. And nothing's worse than having no room at the inn because somebody was selfish and monopolized the space with a tent or a hammock. So let's talk about hiker boxes, which is an excellent resource for hikers to grab those few little extra free things interspersed along those hiker towns across the trail. So in my opinion, it's a little like those take a penny, leave a penny dishes that you see in convenience stores. Well, at least when we used to have pennies. Don't be the person just constantly taking. You know, if you've consistently grabbed out a number of Ziploc bags at each town, maybe it's your turn to buy a set, take your 2, leave the 10 you don't want to carry. It's kind of a trading post of sorts, so give as much as you take. Okay, bear bags. Everybody has different philosophies on bear bags. Some people will hang their food religiously, some never, and some intermittently. If you're staying in a shelter where there are other people, common theme here through a lot of my points is be respectful. If they've made the choice to hang their food, whether for bears or mice or rodents, etc., and you're staying in that same living quarters as they are, it's really not right to not hang yours. So if you're in your tent, do what you want. But under kind of a shared accommodations, I think you lean towards the lesser evil and hang your bear bag. The next two are somewhat of a similar vein, and that's kind of documenting your journey. If you're a vlogger, one of the most enticing aspects of the vlog is really showing your environment. And quite often that means showing your environment with other people. Not everybody wants to be chronicled on YouTube. So if you're going to have them in your video, whether talking or even in the background, just ask permission. You're going to find a lot of people aren't going to care. But there's a few that would just prefer not. One of the best people I saw do this was Pee-wee, Amanda Best, last year. I actually saw her in her vlogs announcing that she was a YouTuber and asking if they mind being on camera. The second part is really about being aware of those that are there to vlog or just take pictures. And this is more at those scenic spots, those vistas. And yeah, there's nothing better than getting that beautiful view, sitting down, having lunch, and just taking in the scenery. But other people want to take that in too. Sometimes they want a nice little picture to memorialize that moment. And they don't necessarily want you sitting in front of the center in the middle of their picture. My advice and my recommendation, do with what you will, is enjoy the vista, but once you've kind of had that moment, just back off a little bit. Take it in, but take it in from a bit of a distance so that other people can step up and also see the same thing. And while I never made it to Katahdin, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. And some of them, you want to see this epic moment where they climb that sign. And there's always that one person just kind of sticking their head in the background. And I get it, it's part and parcel of the trail. You never quite have a place all to yourself, or at least infrequently. But sometimes it's just nice to have that moment. I don't know, what do you think? Okay, we're almost at the end. The next is really just follow leave no trace principles. There's a whole list of things that I could say don't do, but just leave the trail as good or better than when you found it. And please, please, bury your toilet paper. And my last point is really about hiker trash. And it's an often used term, and as hikers we like to represent ourselves under that moniker. Quite often related to our lack of hygiene. When you don't bathe for a few days, hiker trash seems to fit. When you get into town and you order everything off the McDonald's menu, or you're searching for every available outlet to charge your gear, hiker trash. Bear in mind, when you get into town, you are also a guest. People live there. And yes, some may congratulate you on your adventure, help you along, but others may not care. And they have a right to not care, so leave that sense of entitlement at home. It does come down to be respectful. It's their town, you're a visitor. Treat it as such. You're going to meet some of the nicest, warmest, most welcoming people when you're on the trail. Give back. Show that appreciation. You can't leave society entirely behind. There are norms that I think you still need to maintain. Remember that waitress working at that local cafe is still working for tips. Whether it's a hiker trash coming through or a normal customer, she needs to spend as much time with you as she does anybody else. And that also means, even though you're hiker trash, clean up after yourself. Don't trash that hotel room. Represent this community in good standing. And if you do that, we're going to have a constant influx of people encouraging you and helping us through our various trails. And ultimately, it's good just to be a good person. So there you go. That's my viewpoint. But I'm interested. What do you think? Do those make sense? Are there any you disagree with? Are there any you would add? Put your comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you're new to my channel, feel free to subscribe. So that was a lot colder than I thought it was going to be. I think it's like -10, but that wind was biting. Anyway, the one benefit of not being on the trail is when you go out for a hike in the cold, you can come back and sit in front of the fire and warm up. Anyway, so that's my list of what I would classify as hiking etiquette. And the preface being that it's all just in my humble opinion. But you can definitely see the common theme running through it is, don't be an idiot, don't be a jerk. Follow those rules and you'll have a great time out on the trail and you'll fit right in. Till next time, hike on. Oh. You never know who's going to roll in late. Good times. Be respectful of those around you. Ah, shit.